Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Hanging with the Hoopers podcast. Tim and Andrew Hooper, your hosts, where we believe the attitude of leadership is everything. Andrew, good to be back.
Hey, man, good to be back. We think about attitude of leadership. Like, what is it? What is it? Let's go there first a little bit, because you've been sharing some nuggets with me. I'm not trying to put you in a box, but let's talk about that for a minute, because we lead every show with it, right? So what does it mean?
An attitude of leadership is how you show up, the tone of voice you use, the heart at the depth of your soul, the heart in which you approach those in your responsibility, those you're responsible for, those in your organization. And I really believe that the attitude of leadership, we can change our attitudes, right?
Yeah.
Leadership, there's skill around leadership, but there's an attitude of leadership. And the attitude is at the core of my being. Do I assume positive intent with this person in front of me, with this team member? Am I looking at the best, not just the worst? Am I formatting a narrative in my brain prior to asking questions and digging in and seeking to understand? Because a lot of us do. So the attitude is all about like how we show up in that person's life and the context we take or not take with that person. So I think the attitude, like, we have to just be honest as leaders. How is our attitude? Is it positive or is it negative overall? Do we default to negativity about team members, team players when there's an issue? I like the quote that says, you see the real essence of a person when they're shaken, because when you're shaken, it's, what's inside spills over. And so I think during the challenges is really where we get to oftentimes get a glimpse of who we are attitude wise as a leader, and also get a good glimpse of where we can most improve. So, but the attitude's all about the heart of how we interact and engage with and coach and mentor and lead. It's so important, man. I've seen some. Go ahead. Throw it back to you, man. What comes to mind?
Well, you said, this is the one thing you told me a couple of weeks ago. In what you just said, you said when you're shook around, right, things are going crazy, you got a lot going on. That's when the true attitude comes out with folks. And I know for me, I'm always reminded that in busy seasons where we're rushing around, we're doing a lot, and maybe your bandwidth, and I know that's like a corporate keyword, right? You have bandwidth for stuff, but you truly feel like your bandwidth is to the max.
Yeah.
To me, the attitude of leadership goes back to, and I have to remind myself of this constantly, bro, and we all do, we're all human, but it goes back to, like, when you're interacting, when you're so busy, when you're creative, when you're stressed, you have a lot going on. Is it kind of like that just shallow surface level niceness, or are you truly still taking time to invest in the people that you're working with, even in a short period of time, right? So that's how I view it in my life right now is, I might only be with you for a short period of time, but how can I really pour into you and get to know you and be there with you and help with what I'm helping you with, versus, you know what I'm talking about. We come in leadership and we're a lot going on with our teams, and all of a sudden we get into this kind of surface level niceness, surface level humanity that's not necessarily deep, and it can hide a lot under the surface, right? So the attitude of leadership, man, it comes back to, like you said, I think it comes back, if you're going to boil it down, to servant leadership, how you show up, how you give for your team, how you give for others on your team. If you're not leading a team, how are you showing up as a leader in an individual producer role? To look out and again, not assume negative intent, but assume positive intent for everyone on your team. So just wanted to kind of go there, because I know we lead every episode with it, and I think our first episode over a year
we
and a half
really
ago
unpacked
was
it.
unpacking the attitude of leadership. But like starting
Circling
with that
back is great. Yeah.
and also because I'm personally convicted, because I've been ripping and running, and at times you're like, bro, don't forget the attitude of leadership, right? And
well, it's the same for me, man. We get it.
Level on
We've given permission. It kind of gets to the crux of what we want, where we want to go today, is we've given each other permission. Like, we've had those deeper conversations to say, like, in the moment, we have permission to call each other out I mean, we banter with each other professionally on stage all the time, and it's fun. And it's people are like, oh, it's such a great duo and all that. Like, that's fine. But if you actually saw the real banter that happened behind the scenes, like, we've given each other permission to have those hard conversations.
Right.
But we've level set to say this is not how this does not change how I love. Like, I love you at a deep level, deep human level. But you, like, where are you going in life? And we've shared that with each other. And do I have your permission to hold you accountable or call you out when I see maybe you straying from that vision? And you've done the same thing for me. I use it all the time. You tell me all the time, protect the asset, build margin, so all that to say, okay, in the whole topic today, and very, very short, very, very short, but I want to emphasize this point. If you want to be an A player, or if you think you're an A player, then I want to ask you this. Who have you given permission to call you out on things that do not align with your vision? If you're a leader and you think you're a great leader, I want you to ask this question. Has your team given you that permission to call them out on things that do not align with their mission, with their vision, where they're going? Have you gotten that clear, and have you had those deep heart-to-heart conversations of where are you going and what's your tolerance for being coached in this? Like, a coach a long time ago, Andrew, he said, okay, so you want this, you want to publish your book? I'm like, yes, sir. He says, okay, so on a scale of 0 to 10, how hard do you want to be pushed? I was like, 11. He's like, think about that for a second. Like, I mean, I wanted it, man. And so having these conversations, really unpacking and going deep on the motivation and the vision and getting clarity about the KPIs and like, okay, all right, and then also, how are you going to report? How are you going to be reporting on this? What is that going to look like? And then if you're an A player, have you gone that deep with somebody? And do you have people? Because sometimes we've attained a level of success, sometimes all on our own, or we've had some good mentors and we feel like we're good. If you want to go to that next level, if you want to grow, I believe every A player has somebody or has given permission to somebody to call them out.
Yeah.
Call me out, coach.
Call me out, coach. I'll put it this way. If I'm cruising along and the key people in my life that I work with or that I, sure, boss, if you're reporting to a boss, if you're a business owner, maybe it's a peer or somebody, your mentor, or somebody like that. If you don't have someone in your life who can call you out and say, hey, like, I saw that, didn't love it, what's going on? Or I was listening to an analogy last night. They were talking about Nick Saban, who is the longtime coach for Alabama from the Tide and retired this past year. And the way he would talk to people on the team, the way he would talk to people was a positive affirmation, but it was like, hey, Tim, you are the best. The reason you're here at Alabama is because you're the best. That's why you're here. And I know you're the best. Why aren't you playing like you're the best? What's going on? And Nick Saban says he got out of it because that culture of accountability started going away with all the NIL and the compensating college players for playing. So now it's just how much you're going to pay me and am I going to play? So it was less about development of character. It was more about money and can I get my bag right now? And so that's why he said he got out of coaching, because it was changing. The whole landscape's changing. He wants to be able to influence people for good. But I go back to what he said. It's the ability to call people out, but also in those moments as a leader, when you've not been up to par or when you've, stepped out of line or it was something happened that was on your watch, you also have to allow yourself to be called out and also have that same humility to say, this was my fault. Because in that dynamic, that dichotomy of team, if you are the person who's only calling out and never taking accountability, your team will become tone deaf. You might be an A player and you're on a team where you're tone deaf to somebody calling you out because they never call themselves out, right? Or there's no accountability on that side of the equation. So these things work together. If you want to build the most top performing team of top performers, it's, hey, I can call you out, but you can call me out and I call myself out. We're accountable to each other. And it's that whole thing of we're all here. We're all top players. Maybe we're not playing like it today. Why not? What's going on? And let's get to the root of that problem, right?
Yeah.
So I love the sports analogy because I think it's very clear. Now, the one other piece of this that I think is critical, or to at least talk about and think about, do you consider yourself a top player on your team? So a couple criteria when it comes to the accountability piece, and I'm not talking about performance. If you're probably there are top performers who I would say are not top people on the team for these reasons.
A team player, yeah.
Accountability, how they play with the team, how they make others on the team feel. And in the accountability piece, if you're a top player, you think you're a top player, but every time you need to step up or you get called out or something happens or you're coached or you're some constructive criticism, whatever, if you turn around and don't do anything with it and that just becomes toxic energy with the rest of the team, I would say you're probably not a top player.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just about numbers if you're tearing up the team and you're not being accountable, what does that tell everyone else on the team? Right? And Tim, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but if you're a top performer and you get coached and your response is negative or your response is to tear up the team around it or like be toxic with that feedback, what does that tell the other team member who needs, when they get coached, they're not a top performer, they're just coming on, they get coached, they're going to do the same thing, right? They're going to model the behavior of that top performer. So let's go there a little bit.
Well, we've been part of those Zoom calls where somebody was, and I've been part of those times where the leader was kind of, and we've addressed this before, calling everybody out for the thing that one person did, right? Because that leader's afraid to have that hard conversation with that one person. Right. So we've been part of those calls, and I know because I've received the text messages from other leaders saying like, what's going on here? Like, are you, this is insane. Like, and so I know that this happens. Like leaders I don't even know if they're aware, start a whole volley and domino effect of like gossip from not approaching difficult conversations correctly. So there's that from the leadership side. But I think from an A player side, making the commitment that when something comes across that, stings a little bit is, listen, I'm going to, number one, thank you. Thank you. That's always a great just default. It's hard sometimes, but it's the best default. Is thank you. Because in that attitude of gratitude, even if you heart of hearts don't mean it, if you're thank you, it gives your brain that pause to think and say, what am I thanking them for? It's like, hey, they felt like they could approach me with this. So thank you. And it opens up your mind. Gratitude always opens up your heart, which is powerful. But saying thank you, it's the first start. And then really unpacking. And sometimes you have to walk away and say, listen, this person's not in the arena with me. This person doesn't even understand what's going on. They've not been present. We all know those leaders haven't. And you have to be able to then in that moment, just be discerning to say, is this, like, are they even coaching or calling me out on what I've given them permission? But it goes back to us. It's Stephen Covey says, more is in our control than we give ourselves credit for, or we allow ourselves to believe. Have I given them permission to hold me accountable? If you haven't done this yet, think about the next time you can sit with your leadership and say, hey, this is my vision. This is where I'm going. These are the KPIs I built. Give me some feedback on this. What would you tweak? What am I not seeing? Where are the gaps? If they come back and say, this looks great, I'm like, okay, how are you going to hold me accountable to this? You will blow their minds, number one. But number two, you will now not take offense when somebody reaches in and says, hey, you asked me to hold you accountable to this, and I'm just curious. Like, help me understand where's this fit in with that? It's like, you know what? Great point. So, Andrew, I think it's number one, it's more in our control than we think about leaning into accountability. And as an A player, I believe, a team player, you model in that moment what other people on the team probably want. Because I think people do want to be challenged. They do want to be coached. They do want to be trained and mentored.
Every top performer who I view as a true top performer in my entire life has always come out of a tough meeting and said, you know what? I got to get my shit together. I got to get my act together. Whatever it was, right? It wasn't about, I can't believe this. I can't believe that. It was, you know what? I can tighten up there. I can get better here. And so in those constructive coaching moments, the top performer attitude, the attitude of leadership as an individual producer is, let me control what I can control. And at some extent, I don't always agree with the phrase perception is reality, because I think that gets bandied about all the time and it's not always true. But if the perception of this is that, okay, how do I fix that based on what I can control? So take accountability. Yes, I need a shot in the arm. I need that kick in the pants sometimes to get better. And then on the flip side, for leaders listening, you are entrusted with the care of your people. Just because someone's given you the permission to hold them accountable does not mean you need to be rude. It does not mean that all you do is look for the chinks in the armor. Like, right paramount with the criticism and coaching, you need to have the recognition and reinforcement. You can't have one without the other. And so I want to make that super clear here. While we're talking about accountability and calling people out, that's half the equation, probably less than half. Probably more than half needs to be recognition and reinforcement and support, right?
Yeah.
The 2 to 1 or whatever in coaching, right? Like 2 or 3 positives to 1 negative. Like, think about that ratio. But in the moments where you're being called out, anyone on the team, we're talking about top performers, but if you want to be a top performer in your role, I don't care if it has to do with numbers or anything. It could be you could be working on paperwork. You want to be a top performer in your role. When you get feedback,
ask for
embrace
feedback,
the accountability, and look at what you can actually control and get better at. And don't start the toxic drama on the team. Don't be the person that creates gossip, creates all these issues on the team, because Tim, you and I have dealt with this in years and years and years. Those are the teams that will crumble and fall.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you're entrusted with the responsibility to take care of your people, which includes holding them accountable, being accountable yourself. You're not superhuman. You're not above reproach. We all have things we can work on in any role, in anything we do. But you're also entrusted to recognize and support and give the care that's needed. So, Tim, bring us home with a golden nugget on this topic.
Well, first and foremost, Simon Sinek says it best. A team is not a group of people who work together. A team is a group of people who trust each other. And so that's really where it boils down to. Do you trust your team? And team player, a player, do you trust your leader? And trust is established in deep conversation. Trust is established in unpacking motivation, starting with why. Why am I doing this? Where's the vision? Where am I going? All right, clear, got it. Here are my KPIs. Here's what I'm doing. Any gaps? I want feedback. And then I want feedback throughout the process.
Right.
Staying in tune with each other. And then as a leader, model that. You pitch something out to the team. Don't come down hard. This is going to happen. Here's my idea. I want feedback. Over the next 2 weeks, I want feedback from you all. And then we're going to circle back. So just start thinking about how you can model accountability to your team by being accountable. Let them call you out. I think back to when Kelsey was up in Andy Reid's face during this. Remember this during the Super Bowl, and he's up in his face, and or playoffs. I can't remember, but he's up in his face, and it was on all the headlines, like and then Kelsey or Reid came out later and was like, no, here's what was said, and here's the permission I've given my players, just like they've given me permission to do the same thing to them. But do you trust each other? Because in those moments, that's what trust will get you through those critical moments. So good stuff, bro. Be an A player, ask for accountability, and be grateful for it.
Love it, man. Short, sweet, to the point. Go be inspired today. Be accountable. And don't forget.
Drop some comments, guys. What are your thoughts?
Don't forget to love on your team and build that trust too.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks for being here.
We'll see you next time.
See y'all.
Take care.